everybody, and welcome once again to Food for the Soul. Today I'm going to cook for you a very simple egg curry. It's really heartening, it's got protein, and it's easy to make because the ingredients are easily available. And while I do that, I am going to continue with my teaching on Matthew chapter 5. We are in the hypothesis, the sayings of Jesus, where he says, I want more from you. And today we're going to look at Matthew chapter 5 verse 33 to 37, which concerns oats, something that affects all our lives. Before I begin, I am going to introduce you to the ingredients that I'm going to use. We've got about 4 chopped onions, I've got 4 tomatoes which are pureed, I've got 6 eggs which I boiled and I've slit them, and then I've got some full garam masala, I've got bay leaves, a piece of cinnamon, cardamom, 2 cloves. Then I have, for the main, I have about 3 chilies. I've got here about a large teaspoon of jeera, 1.5 teaspoon of dhania powder, 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, 1.5 teaspoon of ginger garlic, 1 large teaspoon of red chili powder. And this mixture of a little bit of turmeric, chili powder and salt, I'm going to use it to fry the eggs with. And then finally, I'm going to finish the dish with some garam masala and some kasuri methi. So these are the ingredients. Now, while we do all of that, I'm going to teach you a little bit about Matthew chapter 5 verse 33 to 37. I'm going to turn on the pan. I need this pan to get really nice and warm. And while I do that, I'm going to begin just to kind of refresh your memory. You remember that I told you that Matthew is the teaching gospel, and we are in the first of the 5 large discourses of the Gospel of Matthew. It's called the Sermon on the Mount, and it stretches over chapter 5, 6, and 7. Jesus is teaching his disciples, and he's calling them to give more, much more than the scribes and the Pharisees ever gave or taught. And we are in these hypotheses. They begin with verse 21, where Jesus says, "You have heard it said." There are 6 hypotheses. For those who are perhaps watching this for the first time and not seen the previous one, a hypothesis is simply that the Jews for 400 years simply reinterpreted the law, the prophets, in the way that suited them very conveniently. And Jesus now says, you have heard it said, because it is not really written, it's an interpretation. He said, you have heard it said, but I say to you. And when Jesus says to us, he demands much more. So we're going to take verses 33 to 37, which deals with the matter of oaths. We did adultery and divorce, and in the days to come we'll also do on anger. I have heated up this pan. I need to get it to be nice and warm, and I am going to add some refined oil. Now, I want to say something about oil and the use of oil. You know, the more oil you use, the better the dish tastes. I tend to be a little conservative with the use of oil. I'm going to add first the bay leaves, and I've used 1 cardamom, 2 cloves, and a piece of cinnamon. What you want to really do is to allow the oil to extract from these whole spices their own oils, the aromatic oils, which is what you're really looking out for. So that goes in first. And I'm going to add these onions. Now, once again, with onions, many people think that for all Indian recipes, you need to brown your onions. Well, you brown your onions in case you have a dish that calls for a nice, rich brown color. Then you need to caramelize your onions. If not, the best thing you can do with your onions is to simply allow them to fry till they become translucent, and that takes away the raw taste of the onions. Now, this is going to take a wee bit of time. Here you go. So As you can see, because this is a cast iron pan, it transmits heat very, very quickly, and that's why the onions really get very translucent very quickly. If I have to leave this without stirring it even for a minute, you're going to see that these onions begin to burn. So I'm just sauteing this till it gets to be a little translucent. And to this I am going to add, so basically what I'm doing is I'm making the masala. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the eggs in a while, but to this I'm going to add first some green chili. I'm going to let that fry too. There you go. I'm going to add the ginger garlic paste. Let me fry that in. And I'm going to add all the dry masalas, and then finally the tomato, and I need that to cook. And while I do that, I will fry the eggs which I have boiled. Remember, you boil eggs for about 10 minutes. Now, I made a mistake today. I just took them off the refrigerator and I put them in hot water. And as a consequence, when I was done with it, my eggs look like rockets. You'd see that the yolks have all settled to the bottom. So that's okay. So I'm going to drop that temperature a bit. I want the rawness of the garlic, the ginger, the chilies, all to come off and all the ingredients to marry. So you see, most of these dishes are extremely simple. So I'm going to introduce now the haldi, the red chili powder, the dhania, and the jeera. And that's it. Most of these ingredients don't call for very complex forms of cooking, and these are really quick fix meals. If you're really tired at the end of the day but you want to eat something nourishing, this is a really good quick fix meal. Now if you notice, I've lowered the temperature because I don't want my spices to burn, and in order to prevent them from burning, I'm going to add a little bit of water, just a little. And as I always do, this is the time when I just introduce some salt for my dish, because salt, as I keep saying, reduces the temperature. So here you go, reduce the temperature a bit. And I'm going to let all of that I need this to fry for a bit. And once this is done, I will add the tomatoes, and then I need to leave it for a while because the tomatoes have to cook. I'm going to fry at that point of time the eggs. It's just a 2-minute task, and I will talk to you about the gospel. So this is ready. I will introduce now all of the tomato puree, and I'm going to let this stir and cook. This is going to splutter, so I'm going to add a bit of water, and this needs to cook for roughly about a good 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This is an open pan, so it's going to work a little faster. So you've got this lovely rich red gravy, a tomato gravy, and a lot of these North Indian dishes have a lot of tomato inside. It gives this lovely sour flavor, but it also gives the dish tremendous body. I'm going to let this rest for a while, and I'm going to now talk to you about the scriptures while we do this. So we were talking about the hypothesis, and I said today's text talks about oaths. It very clearly says, again, you have heard that it was said to those of ancient times. Jesus reiterates once again by saying, again it was said to you, because he knows how the Jews had distorted the law. You shall not swear falsely, but you shall carry out the vows you have made to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it's the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one. So, what is at stake? The fourth hypothesis really deals with the third commandment. The third commandment which says, thou shalt not take the name of your God in vain. But if you look at it very carefully, the issue of oaths had nothing fundamentally or principally to do with the third commandment. The third commandment was, you shall not take the name of your God in vain. Don't bear false witness. That's what it really means. But the scribes and Pharisees promoted their own view about oaths, and they linked it to the third commandment. So to give you an example of how they misrepresented it, you need to look at Matthew chapter 23 verses 16 to 19, and it gives an insight into what the Jewish leadership were teaching. The importance of an oath for them was the measure of the value of which it was sworn by. So let me give you an example. In Matthew 23, Jesus highlights how they say, well, if you swear by the temple, it counts for nothing. But if you swear by the gold on the temple, then you are bound to fulfill your oath. So the agenda of these oaths are not really God-driven, but they were man-driven. If nothing else, they were money-driven. Jesus says very clearly to us, do not swear at all. Just don't swear at all, for nothing in creation really belongs to us. It is God who gives us everything. We are dependent on God. Give God. Sometimes we say, God, if you give me this, I promise you I'll give you a gold chain. Gold chain, everything belongs to God. You can't give to God what belongs to him. And really then it doesn't become a prayer. We are treating our omnipotent God really like a grocer, bargaining with him. What do we need to give God? We need to give him our love. He says, either you say yes or you say no. Anything else comes from the evil one. And I'm going to finish that reflection for you in a little while. As you can see, this is bubbling nicely. You've got this lovely, rich red color. I need this to cook a little more. But while this is happening, I'm going to pull out another pan, because here's what I need to do. I have to give those eggs a little bit of a fried treatment. So I'm going to heat this up, let it heat up, or you can pour the oil. I don't need too much of oil for this. You could, I just don't want to. Sometimes they take the boiled egg, they heat a bowl of oil, and they drop the egg in it. When you do that to the boiled egg, it gets a lovely crispy outer layer. Now, if your heart is good and you can take in so much of oil, which I never recommend in any case, good for you. I just want to give these eggs just a nice coating. So I'm going to let this heat up a bit, and when this pan is heated up, I'm going to drop into this pan a little red chili, turmeric, salt, and then I'll put the eggs, and I'm going to let that just fry. When I'm done, I will introduce the eggs into this mixture. So let this get heated up. We're almost coming to the end of a very simple recipe, and I'm coming almost to the end of a simple teaching. So what is really Jesus saying? He's saying, say yes or say no. Speak the truth in all matters. That's what he's really saying. Because if you speak the truth in all matters, then you don't need to take an oath. Do it plainly. You see, when you see a Christian, you should really say, there's a man who keeps his word. A man who keeps his word never has to swear or take any oath. You know, God gave us Jesus, his son. He gave us His word. God gave us His word, and He kept His word, and Jesus kept His word. We are told in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 17 to 19, that Jesus is the permanent yes of God. Think about that. God has always kept His promises when it has come to us, and He asks us to do the same. There is no need for us to go bargaining to Him or taking false oaths. So here's what I'm going to do. This is now pretty hot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce these 6 eggs. And here. So I had made those slits on the eggs, and the idea was, because I wanted, I'm going to just let a little ventilation through. I wanted this masala to get right into the eggs. Yeah, there you go. Now you could, as I said, fry them. So I'm just going to let them rest for a while. I just tilted them down. You could literally drop it in hot oil, and it is done. In the meantime, as you can see, our gravy is ready. The excess water has dried up. It's become really nice and thick. And I'm going to simply add the eggs to this and finish the dish. Now I'm only going to add the eggs. I'm not going to add the masala in the pan, because remember, it's now beginning, the masala is going to burn because of the heat. I just needed to give it a nice little coating. It's done. There go the 6 eggs. And I'm going to move this to the side. Stir in this into the gravy. And you can check for seasoning if you want a little more salt. What I'm going to do is to allow this to cook for another 5 minutes, but we're not going to waste time showing that to you. I'm going to finish this dish so that you just get an understanding. You can also add a little water if you like at this point of time. How do I finish the dish? I'm going to use garam masala. Now, why do we introduce garam masala at the end and not at the beginning? Because this masala has already been roasted and then it has been pounded, so you don't need to cook it all over again. And also the kasuri methi gives us this lovely bitterish flavor, not too bitter, but it just adds to the wonderfulness of the dish. So that goes in. And then just to make this dish really nice and both pretty and tasty, I'm going to complete this. So it's a lovely egg masala. It's thick, it's nice. It goes great with naan, a paratha, with chapatis, or even as a side dish. And I'm going to finish that with coriander. And now you can see how wonderful this dish is. And this is one of those few dishes where you can cook it and serve it immediately. There are some Indian dishes, it's better if you just leave it to rest for a while, allow the flavors to marry more, but this is really done. In a while I'm going to plate it and I'm going to show you how I will plate this dish. But for now, we are done.